Welcome back to Exotical Chronicles. In today's video, I wanted to briefly discuss the unpopular topic of the evil and covertly jealous stepmother, and the role they play in criticizing and diminishing their attractive stepdaughter's confidence and identity. Of course, for those of you who are familiar with Cinderella, you are aware of the whole evil stepmom trope. But are we really aware of the impact that unhappy and unhinged stepmothers have on their stepchildren? If we peel off the surface layer and then distinguish these negative effects by race, what then do we see? Specifically focusing on Black households where the matriarch, a Black woman, has more than likely married a Black man who was either previously married and produced children in the marriage, or simply produced children from a previous relationship, and due to a unique set of circumstances, has custody of these children or child. Insert his new girlfriend or wife, and now these children have a stepmother. Just as a reminder, let's take it back to the actual story of Cinderella. Remember the new wife, Lady Agatha, who married a nobleman who was Cinderella's dad after he had lost his previous wife, because he was desperate for companionship. Please note the emphasis on desperate. You never want to be desperate for any kind of companionship. You are bound to make the wrong decision. However, Lady Agatha had a charming smile that hid her heart, which was as cold as ice. This is exactly how I and my entire family would describe my daughter's stepmom. Like my daughter, Lady Agatha treated Ella, better known as Cinderella, with contempt, subjecting her to endless chores and menial tasks while lavishing attention and praise upon her own daughters, fueled by her own insecurities and desire for power. Yet through it all, Ella remained resilient, finding solace in the memories of her dear mother and the kindness of the villagers who pitied her plight. Undeterred, Ella's spirits were lifted when her fairy godmother appeared, and Ella set off for the ball, where she captured the prince's heart with her grace and beauty. She fled because the spell was going to break, which was set to occur at midnight when the clock struck 12. But of course, Ella, who lived happily ever after due to her kind heart and unwavering spirit, prevailed over all the darkness that once threatened to consume her. And so the focus here is not on Ella getting married or being pursued by a man, but it's on her resilience, strength, and tenacity in spite of all of the adversity that her stepmother created and intended to use in an effort to diminish her confidence. A stepmother, by definition, is a, quote, female non-biological parent married to one's pre-existing parent, close quote. A Therapy for Black Girls article stated that many people think of stepmothers through the lens of old, outdated fairy tales and myths. But the reality is that the average stepmother is often isolated and very much misunderstood by society. But I'm not sure that I entirely agree with this. I mean, before I go into my own personal experience and that of my daughters, it's important to understand that there have been many cases where modern stepmothers have proven to be egregiously ill-equipped to handle the responsibilities that come with being a step-parent. And there's evidence of them being downright evil. It's not so uncommon. I'm talking real-life twisted fairy tales, not like Cinderella's. In the case of 34-year-old Natalia Barrows of Gwinnett County, who beat her 8-year-old stepdaughter to death with a wooden rolling pin, was just recently sentenced. You know, like the ones you use for baking? Yeah, she was angry. That's what they said. I guess that's her motive for beating her stepdaughter to death. It was also believed that the family had 4 other kids in the home. So having 4 or 5 kids with one stay-at-home mom? No nanny, no help, no supportive mother figure around, a grandma, an aunt, nothing. None of this was mentioned in the article. I'm going to say it's safe to assume that she was pretty overwhelmed. It would be for anyone. Then you add in the layer of unaddressed mental health issues that she probably had. Yikes. But in this case, both her and the biological father were held responsible, as they should have been, especially the father, because where were you, sir? In another case, The case of Tiffany Moss in Georgia, who starved her 10-year-old stepdaughter to death and had the audacity to represent herself in the capital murder trial, which is an obvious sign of mental instability. She was recently sentenced to death and is the only woman on death row in the state of Georgia currently. The Stepmother of the Year award goes to... I'm sparing you of all of the gory details because both of these stories were extremely sad, but also extremely upsetting. Anyone who's a mother would agree. Why did I mention these? What is the significance of these stories? Well, when and if you see the little girls online, you'll see that they were absolutely beautiful, gorgeous, bright, happy, and innocent. But I don't want to get hyperfixated on crimes or case study because that is not what this video is about. However, I thought it'd be worth sharing to add context to the topic being discussed, which is jealous stepmothers. That was the case in both of these really sad stories, which highlight the gravity of just how far envy and jealousy can take someone. Life was lost. And as if mental health crises aren't already prevalent in our community, you have the added layers of the perpetrator's own demons, past traumas, broad range of adverse childhood experiences. Stepmother's jealousy can stem from various reasons, such as feeling overshadowed, fearing the loss of attention or affection from their partner, or simply resenting the intrusion of the stepchild into their lives, thus making blended family environments very complex. Stepmother's jealousy and envy could also stem from unhappiness in her marriage, which is another layer of complexity in and of itself, especially in toxic marriages or marriages built on physical attraction or financial comfort, unsavory shared beliefs, shallow morals, and so on. Some of the things that go into these marriages, like the one my ex-husband, aka my daughter's father, has with his current wife, are full of unmet expectations and an imbalance in the shared responsibilities. These responsibilities vary from cooking, cleaning, generating income, nurturing, and disciplining the children. My daughter's stepmother had already had 3 kids with my ex-husband, so my daughter was the 4th child in the home. It's obvious that she was burdened with many of the child care responsibilities, and especially those regarding my daughter, because the father left it solely up to his wife to raise and care for the kids. He was always at work. He's always been known to have 2 or more jobs at a time. In this case, it was as if he didn't want to face my daughter for the constant reminder of who she looked like and where she had come from, which was me. So they had very little interaction due to him being away from the home and at work all the time. And this was coupled with the fact that as a man, he simply didn't want to be in the house with all these kids running around him making noise, especially after a double shift. But my daughter's stepmother signed up to take over the childcare responsibilities by inserting herself into the already established family dynamic, i.e., the one between my daughter and her father, and insisted on my daughter calling her mom and blatantly disregarding my role as her biological mother, which was like a slap in the face. But ironically, they had a little me in their home, and they even deceptively took her in with ill intentions. I'll discuss that in a whole nother segment. But they did this only to be faced with the daily reminder that you have a replica of the woman that you hate in your house, who you've now agreed to helping rear and raise. She not only came with my beauty and my looks, but she came with my intellect, tenacity, wisdom, insight, perceptiveness, and confidence that I have. They didn't consider these things and couldn't celebrate these traits once they started to appear as she got older. They especially didn't know how to handle her ever-increasing beauty coupled with her height. She is about 5'8" and towered over her 5'4" stepmother, who I am sure did not like this. She was, of course, relegated to doing things that she didn't want to do around the house. She was a preteen and was, for the most part, the live in babysitter for her three younger siblings. She was an unpaid dishwasher for the house, and as my father said, she was there as an indentured servant. So, anyway, both me and my daughter's phenotype and physical build and aura is that of a seductress. We are both Scorpios, born in November. Both of our energetic vibration, our hearts, and our minds are what encompass our exoticism. The lioness, which is the fearless woman, makes us ferocious about protecting our individuality and those we love. The lioness also holds significance in various African cultures. She represents a powerful matriarch and a symbol of feminine power and resilience. Wow. So you had my daughter over here dealing with this super controlling and obsessive stepmother while her father acted as the docile husband. The docile husband typically refers to husbands who are perceived as submissive, compliant, or passive within their marriages or relationships. They generally lack assertiveness or independence. It's sad but true, and it's something that me and my entire family observed once my ex-husband got into this relationship. Unfortunately, though, the fallout from the dominating stepmother figure and her docile, narcissistic, self-absorbed counterpart and husband is the undue emotional and psychological distress to the child who is by default placed in the middle and paddled back and forth like a ping pong ball, which brings up the heavier issue of suicide among Black girls. So please allow me to move on and transition to this very much needed highlight of the serious implications for young Black girls on a national level. Even the Biden administration called the recent rise in rates of depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts among kids a, quote, unprecedented mental health crises, close quote. A Time magazine article said that about 15% of Black female high school students attempted suicide in the year 2019, which was the highest of all racial groups. Quote, Black youth are 2 times more likely to die by suicide compared to their white counterparts. In the same CNN Health article, which quoted Biden, he also called out the increase in emergency visits for youth aged 5 to 19 years old. These youth all sought help for suicide in the emergency room. It was for suicidal thoughts, which were noticeable before the pandemic, but showed a steady increase over the years. Increases also were shown in areas of hotlines, crisis lifelines, and even residential treatment centers. So anyway, when my daughter went to live with her father and stepmother for a few years while I was across the country in grad school, they started to influence her and forced her to accept that their family was her one and only family, and that would be the reality from here on out. I don't know if they thought that I wasn't serious about transforming my circumstances or elevating my life, but they suddenly started to act as though I was never coming back. They ultimately made some really dumb co-parenting decisions and some very, very hurtful ones that affected not only my daughter, but me and my entire family on multiple levels. Not to mention the toll that it took on my daughter's mental health. Long story short, due to the harmful statements being made and the repeated verbal and emotional abuse that my daughter endured during her time in her stepmother's care, she wanted to take her life. She started cutting and was over it. She was unhappy. She was sad that she was apart from me. And she was very aware of the very tumultuous legal battle that her dad and I were going through in an effort to have her with one or the other parent. Still to this day, not entirely sure why he fought me on this after he agreed to take her for 2 years while I finished a master's degree. But I can assume it has things to do with, him too being jealous of me and my growth and my expansion and, you know, being a Caribbean man, once they have you, they think they always have you. And we have our own issues, but unfortunately, he allowed them to pour over into his parenting or lack thereof, and my daughter became suicidal. She eventually was Baker acted and was hospitalized for 7 days, which is when I started making plans and hopped on a plane to go and rescue her essentially out of this really hellish environment that she had been in for some time. I did not care at that point that we had an ongoing court case, as you could imagine, as I jumped into mother bear mode and snatched her up out of there with the quickness. I didn't care about what laws I broke or what code of conduct, you know, I was violating. I couldn't care less. My daughter's safety and her well-being was top of mind and a priority. And I'm happy to say that that was almost 3 years ago. She's been here with me again in Los Angeles, thriving, growing, and expanding so beautifully as a young lady, thanks to my knowledge and understanding of these dangerous implications surrounding mental health and jealous and envious women. So, fortunately, my daughter and I were in a situation where we had the foresight and the resources to prevent a situation from happening where somebody was seriously hurt or even killed. But it's important to know that someone who may feel insecure or intimidated by you, whether that be a friend or even a family member who they perceive as being more attractive than them, can actually lead to death. This is not a joke, and I'm not exaggerating. I've provided references, and this is what the data shows. So, I hope that many other young girls and women who are watching and listening to this can make efforts to escape any potential threats to their environment and or mental well-being by understanding how they are perceived by others, especially those who attempt to cause them pain and suffering for simply being beautiful. I hope you enjoyed this video today, and I look forward to bringing you more information that can educate and inform you on how to stay safe. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.